Hello everyone and welcome to another JetSim flight video. My name's Chris and today I thought I'd do something a little different than we normally do. How we create the panels in Solidworks, which is what we're currently using to do all of our panel designs. And then I'll also do some video showing us actually cutting out the panel that we're going to design and put together, and basically the whole process that goes behind creating one of these panels. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so the image that we have in front of us is the console for the Embraer 135, 145 Legacy Jet series. The panel that we're going to be building today is going to be the takeoff config check button. This little button right up here on the top next to the pulls. I know it's a really simple button. But I think this is a good way for us, a good point to start and a good place to start as far as showing you guys exactly how we put these things together and bring them to life in our cockpit. So now that we have that, let's go ahead and jump over to SolidWorks and take a look at how we're going to create this. Okay, so here we are in SolidWorks, and as you can see, we don't have anything open right now, so we're just going to go ahead and create a new. Okay, so here we have our blank canvas. And we're going to go ahead and select the top plane, and we're going to sketch. For those of you who have not used SolidWorks before, it's a pretty good program. I would say probably Autodesk is probably a little better option these days, mostly because Autodesk makes a lot of the plugins for the chem portion of what we'll be doing. It's easier to just have something that's unified like that. I already had a copy of SolidWorks I just started using it and learning on it, and there are plenty of videos on YouTube to check out if you want to, dive into a more advanced 3D program for doing your designs for these kinds of things, because you can do some really interesting stuff here, and we'll get into some of that as we start making this. So let's start the first piece, and I already have all the measurements in place of what the sizes actually need to be. So I'm just going to go ahead and create those. So what we'll do is we'll go up here and we're going to do a corner rectangle. We're going to come down here to the main axis point. This is essentially 0, 0 on our axis. And as you can see, there's like a little orange dot there, and that's actually signifying to us that we're in the center. So we're going to go ahead and take and drag that, and it doesn't really matter what size we're going to do right here because we're going to enter in the values down here. So for the Y, we want to have 71. And this is all in millimeters. Use the metric system only because it's a little bit better for accuracy, especially when we're talking about anything mechanical or anything like that. It's almost always easier to do it in metrics. Okay, so that's done. So now we have a rectangle. Okay, we're all set. That's the whole thing. I'm just kidding. Okay, so now that we have that sketch completed, now we'll go ahead and exit the sketch, and we'll go to Features, and we're going to do Extrude Boss or Base. And now you can see we have something that looks three-dimensional. So what we're doing here is we're taking that little square that we just created, and we're going to give it an actual 3D shape. So it's wanting to know exactly how much shape do we want that to have. And we can control this in several different ways. We can control it with this arrow here and get it to whatever size we want it to be. Or we can just simply go over here to the left side, and enter in the value that we're going to be using. So I know that it's 2.32 millimeters is how thick our acrylic is that we're going to be cutting out of. So that's what we're going to put. And this is off of the sketch plane. So that means that the sketch plane is 0, 0, 0 in terms of XYZ coordinates. That means that this top of the plane here, this top corner, is actually 2.32 millimeters up from 0. So that's in the Z direction, technically. I don't know why it shows it this way here. This is not really the case. But anyhow, this is going to be in the Z direction. So when we're actually in the cam, it will be a Z direction. So this is 2.32 millimeters up from 0. So, and that we're selecting the direction as blind, and in the up direction, we could reverse the direction so that the top of our part is 0, 0, and all the values in the cam would be negative then, so it would be going down to negative 2.32 if we were cutting anything through it. But I like to use the floor as 0. It's a little bit to do, especially when you're getting the CNC machine set up. So we select OK here on that, and now we have our box that is 71 by 71 by 2.32 millimeters. And the next part that we're going to do is we're going to switch back to the top view. So we have a good view of the top. We'll zoom out just a little bit. And now what we'll do is select the top plane again. I'm sorry, actually we want to go back to this. Select this. Select the top. Essentially we're selecting that top surface there, and we're going to build a sketch on top of that top surface. And the reason for that is that we want everything that we do from this point to be coming down into the part. So we select that top surface and we start our new sketch, and we start building the things that we know that we're going to do. So first thing is to set up some guidelines that we're going to be using. So we'll just go ahead and put these in from top to bottom here. And I'm just going to go ahead and draw the guidelines and adjust them as we go along. And so all of the holes are going to be 10 millimeters in. So that's 10 on the X, and this would be 61 on the X for the second one. Okay, and now we're going to draw 2 more guidelines coming across here like so, and like there. Alright, and again we'll go back and we'll click on this to adjust that so that we're on 10 on that, and 61 on that. Okay, so now what we have here is we have a corner point here at 10 millimeters in from the top and side. So this is going to give us a really good point for, if we go back to our picture, this is going to give us a really good point to be creating each of these screw points that we have in this particular panel. So we try to do these as accurately as possible. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create the bottom left, bottom right hole, and this is the base panel. So it's going to be one panel in a part of usually 2 or 3 panels depending on what the panel is being made. This one in particular is just 2 panels, a base panel, which is the one that we're making here, and then a top panel, which is the one that's going to have this cutout here and all the lettering and text on it. But we're going to make the base panel first, and we'll be showing you the whole process of both of those 2 panels. So next we're going to go and we're going to create the holes that will be on the base panel. So this will be the pieces that get mounted on both the small hole and the large hole. So let's go ahead and go back to Solidworks. And in Solidworks, we're going to go here to this center point on the bottom left. And we know that this needs to be 3 millimeters in diameter, in radius, which makes 6 millimeter diameter. And same thing here on this corner. All right. And this is going to be a 2 in this corner and a 2 in this corner. Okay, so now we have 2 separate sized holes that fit what we're looking for. Now let's go back to our image one more time, and what we're going to specifically look at this time, and I'm going to zoom into it here just a little bit, is this little circle here, which is actually a button. So it's slightly larger than this, but I can't really tell the exact measurement. but if I had to guess, it looks like it's probably 15 mils total. So we'll start with a 7.5 radius circle. Back to SolidWorks. Okay, so we go down this line, we trace down till we come to this center point, which lights up orange. We drag across, and now you notice that we have this dashed line that comes in. Now we'll go up here to this top line, we'll try to find that same orange point and drag down, and now we have a vertical. Now, as we come close to the vertical and horizontal, we get two dashed lines, which is great. Now, we simply drag from that point, and we'll type in 7.5, and that gives us our 7.5 millimeter hole. Comparing that with our part here, I think that what we have is pretty close in terms of what we're looking for, and I think that this is a pretty good size for what we're actually looking for. That gives us a 15 millimeter diameter circle, which is a pretty good size button to work with. Okay, so there's that. So we'll say okay on that. Okay, so now we have these pieces on our drawing, on our sketch. Now we need to actually make them into holes. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to exit the sketch. And now you see that those have all turned blue, light blue. And we're going to go up to our features again, and now we're going to do an extrude cut. And we're also going to turn to our isometric view so we can see what we're doing. And now you can see that it's got like a down arrow here so that we can see exactly what it's doing. And you can see again that I can adjust this in any direction that I want, as much as I want. Now I want this to go through all of them, so I'm going to do 2.32 here in the box. I can also go to through all or through all both directions. This ensures it's going to go all the way through the part no matter what, but doing just the exact height of the part as well will work just the same. So that looks good. So we'll go ahead and say okay. And now you can see that we have the holes in our part just like we want them. That looks pretty good. Alright, so let's go back to our top view now that we have that in place. And let's go ahead and save. Now, that's basically our base panel is complete. There's not really much else to do to this panel specifically because this is just the first part of the panel. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go back up to the save menu and we're going to do save as. We're going to do a save as a copy and open. And we're going to change the name here to top panel. And here in just a second you'll see exactly why we're just saving a copy of this and opening it. So basically what I just did was I just cut our job time in half because now I have the top panel ready to go with all the circles and stuff cut out where they're supposed to be. And I don't have to go back and redo those again. So this really cuts down on the time there. So the difference here is that we're going to do a couple of different cuts on this to make some of these pieces a little different than the bottom. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go to here and we're going to edit the sketch and we're going to make a couple of different changes. One is we're going to come up to here and we're going to do a 5 mil circle on these two corners. So 5 mil. Okay, so now we have these two circles. And now we're going to take the line tool and we're going to come across to here to the edge, over to the corner, up to this where we've got a dashed line, and then over to this line right here. Okay, so now we can say okay on all of that, and we'll do the same thing on this bottom one. And over to our corner, and up to the corner, okay, and okay. Okay, now we'll go to Trim Entities. We're going to trim out all these pieces that we don't need of this bigger circle. Okay, just like that. That looks good. And now that we have those outer circles done, we can delete these inner circles because we no longer need these. Okay, that's pretty much it for those pieces. Let's go ahead and exit the sketch and see how that affects what we have. And there we go. Now we have the panel that has the two corners cut out of it. So to see how this really all comes together, we need to go in and we need to create another new piece. So we're going to make an assembly from the part or assembly. Okay, so here's our base panel, and we're going to go to Insert Component, and now we want to insert the top panel, and now you can see we have both panels in here. All right, and here's how we put them together. We're going to tilt it down slightly, well, maybe. There we go, and we're going to grab this ring on the bottom of the top panel and the top part of this ring on the bottom, the base panel, by hitting Shift and clicking. And then we're going to go up here and click Mate. And that's going to bring those two right together on top of each other, and then it's going to let us verify that this is exactly what we want. That looks exactly like what we want. So let's go ahead and click OK. And our mate is done. So now we have that panel essentially created without all of the text and lettering on top of it. So there's that. Let's go ahead and save our assembly. What having the assembly allows us to do is it allows us to see whenever we make a change to a panel how that's going to affect the overall look of the panel. So that's really handy if we're trying to make some kind of edits somewhere that we need to, verify that the holes align or verify that something else aligns properly. And where this is going to become important is here in just a moment. We're going to go back and edit that base panel a little bit because we're going to add some holes for an LED that's going to basically mount to that base panel so that we can get the backlighting that we're going to require. Let's go back to our top panel. And let's go ahead and add the text that we want. So we're going to go back to the isometric view, where again we're going to select that top surface and click Sketch. And we're going to go to our sketch and back to the top view. All right. So let's go back and take a look at our image one more time that we have of the takeoff config button. And we're going to look specifically here at the white text and the circle and the two little lines after before and after the takeoff TO config text. We're going to be doing a process known as tracing, and that tracing is how we get the letters that you're going to see here. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to put those letters in place, but we're not actually going to cut them out in the model. We'll be able to see them, but it won't actually cut them out. And this is going to provide us the best looking text that we can possibly provide. So let's go back to Solidworks and show you exactly how that's done. Okay, so now that we have the top of the panel and we're selected on our sketch, and we're going to kind of just eyeball those measurements as far as where these things are going to go. The first part is that we're going to go ahead and we're going to build a circle out of this center that's going to come around it. Now I'm a stickler for using really even numbers. We did 7.5 here. I think what we'll do is we'll do 10. That'll keep the white line pretty close to there, and we'll say OK. And now anyone who knows anything about SolidWorks knows that you're not supposed to have these closed circles or circles that don't have any real definition. It's known as under-defining or over-defining. In this case of tracing, we're not going to run into that problem because essentially our tool, our CNC tool, is just going to trace the lines that we have on the sketch here. So there we have the circle for our takeoff check button. And now let's go ahead and get into the text. So we'll select text, and I'm going to uncheck document, use document font, because as I thought, we have the wrong font selected. So what we're going to be using is OLF Simple Sans OC, and essentially this is a single line font, or an open line font basically. And we want to use 3.5 millimeters as the height. That's perfect. And so we're going to type our text in here, and for us this is going to be TO config. And we don't want it to go around the arc, so we're going to delete that. So now you can see it's down on the bottom, down here, and we want it up here. So what we're going to do is, while we're in the sketch text dialog, we can actually move it around by simply clicking where we want the leftmost point to be. And maybe. Of course I say that, and now it's not going to actually let me do that. So we'll go ahead and, oh, it did, there we go. Okay, so now we'll go back into that text. Now we should be able to just point and click where we want that to go, and this should help us to kind of get it centered. I honestly have not figured out exactly how to do this centering text over here yet, so if you know how to do that, please leave that in the comments for me, because I would love to learn how to put it just directly on the center. I'm sure it's something really simple that I just haven't found yet, but yeah, I haven't found it yet. Okay, so looking at the text relative to the size of everything else, I'm not too happy with the 3.5. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to up it to 4 mil. That looks a little better, I think, in terms of size. And just checking, it looks like the O is pretty much the center point in our original. So that looks pretty good. All right, so there's that. I'm happy with that. Looks good to me. Now let's go ahead and click text again. And this time we're going to click first where we want this to go. So I'm going to click right there, and I'm going to write check. And obviously we're not using the document font, so we're going to want to go back and fix that. OLF Simple Sans, and we're using 4 millimeter. Okay, looks good. And we'll say OK. Now, there's another way you can move the text. So basically, while we don't have the text actually selected and we're not in the text configuration box, we actually move the text by just dragging this blue dot wherever we kind of want it. It looks like it's pretty close to being on the center, maybe just about this far off, and the good thing is we can see where the original point was. This is the advantage of using this method, is that you can kind of eyeball exactly how far it needs to go in one direction or the other, and then move it that far and see exactly how close you are in terms of getting it on the point that you want it to be on. That looks pretty good to me. So I think I'll just say OK there, and now that looks pretty good. So the next thing is to go ahead and add these secondary lines. Now I'm going to use this F line as basically my starting point, and I'm essentially just going to go right out to the edge to almost the full side of the edge here. Where do we want to go? This is 71, right? So let's do 65, I think. And escape, so we're not continuing to drive that. 65 on that, and we'll go with 52 on that. Okay, that looks pretty good. And again, we'll go as a guide off of that. Alright, and okay. Select this, and we're going to be 6 off the corner. And 17 looks pretty good. Okay, so now we have all the lines are going to be drawn on the part in the text. So now we just hit exit sketch, and again we have that light blue kind of fading that's on with text or anything that hasn't been rendered into a feature. So we're going to go ahead and save the top panel, and now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our assembly and take a look at that and see how things have changed there. And right away we get a text box that you can't see, but it does say the models contained within the assembly have changed. Would you like to rebuild the assembly? And we'll say yes. And now you can see the text on top of our assembly, and that looks pretty darn good. So let's go ahead and I'm going to show you the image of the button compared with what we have. And I think we've done a pretty decent job here. So there we go. That's our button. Now, one other thing that we're going to change here on this top is we're going to make a slight recess for the screws on the top left corner and the bottom right hand corner. So let's go back into our SolidWorks and make that change really quick. Okay, so back into SolidWorks, and we're going to switch back to our top panel, and we're going to make off of this again a new sketch, and this sketch is going to be for these top, bottom, and right. Right here in the corners. We're just going to go an extra millimeter. So this would be 3. On the side, 3. Okay. And then we're going to exit sketch. And now here we're going to do an extrude cut. Go to our isometric view. And here we're not going to go down all that far. We're just going to go down 1.25 millimeters. And this is just to slightly recess the head of the screw that's going to hold these together. So we'll say OK. And now you can see that we have this nice little recessed piece in the top of that hole. Okay, so let's go ahead and save that, and again go back to our assembly and check to see what changes have been made. Alright, looks pretty good. Now all we gotta do is just put this thing together and put together the PCB board that goes with it. Thanks so much for stopping by to watch this video on how we create our panels. If you like what you're seeing and you want to see some more videos about our process and what we're doing and how we're building the Embraer flight sim, make sure you subscribe below, and also be sure to click that thumbs up at the bottom. Thanks again and have a good day.